Thank you, Chris McCord, for warming up the audience for me, I guess. Cheers. So this is called Distributed Real-Time Pandemic Response, and it's really about building a nonprofit on Phoenix LiveView. So a little bit about myself. My name is Max Veytsman. I am from Toronto in Canada. This is the slide that's like my resume. So I've been a security consultant. I founded a startup. I've been an engineer at GitHub. And now I'm in the space where I'm trying to make mutual aid tech happen. Like, that is my current quest. And I am also a LiveView contributor. I want to, there's a footnote here, and I want to caveat my LiveView contributions. There's a lot of really cool stuff in Chris's talk that I'm super excited about. And I think my main contribution to that has been nerd sniping Jose into replacing Webpack with ESBuild. And I feel like I'm very happy that he did it, and I'm very happy that I could be there to nerd snipe him into solving a very hard problem that I could not. But I'm not going to talk about new LiveView features. I'm going to talk about Bike Brigade. And first, to tell you what it is, I will have the news talk about Bike Brigade.
And a group of cyclists out making the most of today's beautiful weather, enjoying some exercise while doing good for fellow Torontonians.
We're showing up for community members because we care.
Today, the Toronto Bike Brigade is celebrating delivering its 5,000th box of food. The brigade pairs volunteer cyclists with other community organizations with the goal of helping isolated, vulnerable people, seniors, and healthcare providers during the pandemic by delivering them supplies like food and other necessities. The Bike Brigade offers free delivery service for organizations and individuals in need. The organization says today also marks 20,000 kilometers covered by the volunteer cyclists delivering those boxes, who make use of a unique app developed by the organization to coordinate riders, community groups, and those in need.
The in-house application is really wonderful. It helps us optimize routes, it auto-assigns, and it helps with privacy measures as well. So it's allowed us to serve our partners more and better.
More than 800 cyclists are part of the network, delivering all across the city. If you're interested in becoming a volunteer, perhaps, you can do so on the organization's website.
Yep. Thanks. So I think they told me when I was building the slide deck that you need 3 key points. People are only going to remember 3 things. So the 3 things that I want you to remember, and I will repeat them at least once more. So one is that everyone here has a lot of powers. If you can program a computer, you can do really magical things, and you can have a lot of impact. And I think LiveView gives you superpowers. So you're kind of going from being someone that has super strength to being Dr. Manhattan. So that's my first point. The second point is that I think that you should use those superpowers to do some good in your community. And that is accessible, and you can do a lot. And the last thing is that this talk is an open source announcement, and the Bike Brigade application is open source, and you can go check it out, learn something from it, maybe contribute. So the Bike Brigade started in March of 2020. It was a pandemic response, largely started by the person on the right, who's Dave Shalland is a Toronto lawyer, and he brought together a bunch of people that were cyclists in order to help in their community during the pandemic. And how did it start? It was a Facebook group, and it was a lot of spreadsheets. And you can do a lot with Facebook and spreadsheets. I came around in May 2020, so maybe a few months after it started, because you can do a lot with Facebook and spreadsheets, but there is a limit to what you can do. And they were kind of looking for some tech help of maybe there was a commercial dispatching logistics package, and they wanted someone who could take spreadsheets and put it in there. And I happened to have been starting a retreat at this wonderful place called the Reactivity Center, which is a 3-month retreat for programmers where you can work on whatever you want. So the timing was perfect. I had some other project idea, and I sort of shifted over to working on Bike Brigade. So where are we today? So we operate 7 days a week. We have a very large network of volunteers, and there's almost 600 people that have done at least one delivery with us. So like a typical week, last week, we had 70 people on the road, again, 7 days a week. We did 48 food hampers. We did 78 like vegetable boxes. We did over 750 just prepared meals. And we filled 7 community fridges. And all of these are for different like mutual aid orgs, nonprofits, organizations. We really serve as that like last mile logistics layer. And to do that, I built a quote unquote app, which is not quite an app that I will tell you later. And I'm just gonna play a little volunteer reaction to it.
So this right here, where you press text, like boom, and it's got it right there so that my delivery person knows I'm coming. Too cool. I love it. I
Love it. I'm going to send that message to Max.
So that like Lanerick talking about it always makes me kind of emotional because this was in February, as you can see by the snow on the ground. Toronto's not like that all year round. And you know, it's February, it's the pandemic. I'm not really leaving my house very much, and just like having Darlene send that to me, it really made me feel very good. So the tagline of a lot of mutual aid people, and it's on the back of my shirt, they talk about solidarity, not charity, which is contrasting. Like charity is top down, there's someone coming in, they're airdropping a bunch of money or resources in your community. Solidarity and mutual aid is about kind of people coming from the bottom up and working together in their own communities. And I started thinking about what that means in the world of technology. So when building technology, for me, solidarity, not charity, means that I want to prioritize people over technology. Like I want to make choices that empower people as I design technology for them. So how does this apply? So like if you think about the problem that we're really solving, we have partners. They're going to have a spreadsheet of like where they're delivering a bunch of stuff, bunch of addresses. We're going to have a list of riders, maybe through Facebook, maybe through a mailing list. And we just need to match them up, tell people where to go, and maybe collect some results. And when solving this problem, people should feel good doing this. Like it should feel personal. They should feel connected. Technology shouldn't be a barrier. Like you shouldn't have to install an app or even necessarily have a smartphone. And at every point, I want people to feel that they're part of a community as they interact with a system that lets them do this. So how do I communicate with people? SMS. You don't need a data plan. All our volunteers need is a phone that we can text, and we're going to send them messages. Some of them are automated, but most of them are going to be from people, so that when they get those texts, you just have a phone number and you can text it back anytime and we'll respond. And it's not really an anonymous phone number. Like even by the message I'm showing, talking to our hardcore riders, they know who's texting them just based on the style of the text. Where someone I'll send someone a message and they know that it's me, because I'm an introverted programmer and I'm going to be very direct. Or reading this message, I know that Jack wrote it. And they'll get some details, and the app is just like a link. You can do so much with the mobile web. You don't need to download an app. I don't need to push updates to the app. I can just send you a link. This is your delivery. Here's your itinerary. Here's some buttons that forward you to the texting app or the calling app on your phone, which Lanerick 3 slides ago was really excited about. So building something like this, I'm repeating point 1, is that you have a lot of power as a programmer. LiveView is kind of like a superpower. You can get really, really far. So building Facebook Messenger is, it's like the blog in 15 minutes for Rails for Elixir and LiveView is just like building a live chat app. And you see this is blurred out. Most of my screenshots are dummy data. This one, I was looking at the app last night, putting these slides together, and I couldn't help but take the screenshot because this person literally was telling us how excited they are to come back because this is their community and they love us and they're like really stoked to come back, which is reinforced because they can text this number and they're talking to a real person that knows them that's saying like, yes, we're so excited to see you again. Welcome back from your vacation. And you can build really complex apps really fast as a solo developer or a small team. So from the volunteer perspective, they're getting text messages, they're getting maybe this like static-y page. On the back end, we can build a fairly complex dispatching system to let our volunteer dispatchers assign riders, see who's doing what, and kind of build up that process. This is really the last slide of Chris's talk, is that the frontier of complexity really expands when you have these superpowers, which I'm now going to tell you what some of them are. So I think the first one is that there's no API boundary between the front end and the back end. So this is a quote from the same blog post that Chris was quoting in his talk, which is called How We Got to LiveView on the fly.io blog. And it says, LiveView strips away layers of abstraction because it solves both the client and server in a single abstraction. HTTP almost entirely falls away. No more REST, no more JSON, no more GraphQL APIs, controllers, serializers, or resolvers. You just write HTML templates, and a stateful process synchronizes with the browser, updating it only when needed. And I cut a line from that talk, from that quote, and the last line is that, and there's no JavaScript to write. And I think that everyone really focuses on that last sentence, whereas the most important part is everything that came before it. What's really magical here is that you don't need to, you don't have an API that you need to put between your front end and your back end. The fact that everything's written in Elixir is almost an implementation detail. What's important, this is your like classic LiveView example. I have a button, I click the button, it increments a counter, and I've written this all within the same module, within the same context. There isn't some sort of defined API that I need to update when I change my front end. That can make you move really fast and do really powerful things. The second superpower, and if you saw Josh's talk yesterday, he also talked about this. I think it's really important. It's that you can really add reactivity in like 3 lines of code, and I'm going to show you what they are. So we're doing a lot of messaging. We're using Twilio for messaging. When you get an SMS, you're going to receive a webhook. So we're going to process that webhook. It's such like a simple like Phoenix controller is going to handle that webhook. So Twilio is going to send us some information about like what phone number sent the message, what the body of the message is, some internal ID, and we're just going to call the create SMS message in the Phoenix context. That is very standard. And we're just adding one line to the boilerplate code here, which is that we're going to create a change set, we're going to insert it into the repo, and that last little bit is we're going to broadcast a message created event via PubSub. And in our LiveView, we just subscribe to that PubSub topic. You'll see here that we're checking if we're connected because LiveView is a gen server. You want to subscribe when you're actually mounted in the LiveView gen server and get those messages in the right place. And that's it. We've now subscribed to a topic. We implement this. Messaging.subscribe is just aliasing to calling the correct PubSub subscribe to the right topic. And all broadcasting does is you put it in your pipe in your database operations. And if you're operating in something that has OK with a struct, so such as a repo insert that succeeded, we're just going to broadcast to that same topic whatever event we chose, which in this case is message created, and the structure we got. Otherwise, if there's an error, we're just going to do nothing and let the error fall through. So now that we've subscribed to the PubSub, we get a handle info that the message was created. And in our live view, we can just assign that to the messages and continue on as normal. And in that little bit of code, now the 20 different dispatchers that might be looking at the messaging app, if someone texts that number, they're all going to see a new message appear. Being able to do that kind of distributed reactive app in so little code is really, really powerful. So the third superpower I want to talk about is not LiveView specific. It is a Elixir specific, and it's that you have GenServers. Not needing to pull in stuff like Redis, not needing to pull in all sorts of libraries if you want to schedule work is really, really powerful when you're quickly developing an app. So this is I'm going to walk you through the code that we do to do scheduled messages, right? Because sometimes I want to send someone a message. I don't want to send it at 9, I don't want to send it at 9 p.m. when I'm writing it. I want to schedule it in the future. And all I do is, I have a scheduled messages table in my database, and I have a GenServer. When I start that GenServer, it just sends an interval every hour. It's going to check to see what to send. So you can see that when we knit, we send ourselves the send messages message. And when our GenServer gets the send messages message, it's just going to find all the unsent scheduled messages that exist in the database. It's going to process them. It's going to delete the schedule. This is all inside of a transaction, which outside of the scope of this, but Ecto multi is really, really cool. And that's it. And we can we've now built a thing that every hour is going to run a cron job, send all our messages, and we're good to go. I have a future superpower, and it's future because it's future for me. I think this is ready, but I'm still learning how to use it. So Mark Erickson, who is, I think, at this conference and is talking maybe the next lot, wrote this amazing blog post about using LiveBook as your data analytics, just connect LiveBook to your production. And I was very inspired by it, and Fly does make it very easy to do that. So I've been experimenting with using LiveBook as when normally I would reach for a production REPL. So I did a demo of this talk for the Toronto meetup, and Matt, you asked me to do a live demo of LiveBook. I decided not to risk that, but I will play a video. So I'm going to just open up my LiveBook server, and I've gotten my environment variable set up, so this is connected. This is attached to production by default. And here's my notebook that gives me some stats. I pre-wrote it, and I'm going to run it. And now we kind of see this is a view of how many food hampers or food share boxes we've delivered in the lifetime of this application. That's really, really useful. We actually have a proper stats dashboard that's written by a volunteer who's a data scientist and knows these things. But for a lot of times when I need to get something done quickly, I will just write a little Elixir notebook. And the other super useful thing is it's an evolving app. You need to do data migrations. You need to drop a column. Or maybe you created a new table and you need to move stuff around because you denormalized your data. Just write a notebook, run it in staging or locally, and if it works, that's your script. And it's an interactive data migration script. So the other files you saw in the file picker were migrations that I had because I'm constantly changing my data model. So there are a couple of pitfalls that I want to talk about because you can't have superpowers without dangerous things that you have to step over. So one is sometimes that you do need JavaScript, or in this case, an API boundary. And really happy that I'm following Chris on this because I am solving a problem that he described solving, which is that sometimes you have a list and you need to reorder it on the front end. And he was absolutely correct to say that it's difficult to do if you're using temporary assigns. I struggled a lot with finding the right abstraction. There is a way to do it. At some point, just to keep moving, I said, I'm just going to do this bit in JavaScript. And that's where this sort of push event comes in, where the second part of this bit of code that I showed you when a message is created, we're going to sign it. And then we're going to push event to the client. And here, I can just write a JavaScript handler. And what I want to do, to explain the context, is you imagine like a messaging app. A new message comes in. On the left-hand side, you have a list of all of the different people that you've been texting. You want to bring that person's message to the top of the list. So you're reordering existing data. And in this case, I found a quick way to do it is to just, in JavaScript, take that element that LiveView updated for me correctly, and just make it the first child of the parent container. Don't hate me for putting this at a talk, Chris. Like, I know that there's a LiveView correct way to do it. For things that are difficult, like, you can always do this thing in JavaScript. The second pitfall is maybe you've read somewhere that LiveView is just a GenServer, and if you understand that, you understand the Zen of LiveView. It might not be the right GenServer. And the thing is that the UI is in the LiveView. So if you're doing something slow, that's going to block a lot of user interaction. And I found myself, without thinking, because it's so easy to do things asynchronously, doing things asynchronously in the wrong place. So in this example, we're going to respond to an event, and we're going to do something that takes a long time. There'll be, the user won't be able to click on something else that triggers another event while that slow thing happens. So try to avoid writing code like this. This is where tasks come in. So a better way to do it is that we're going to send a message to ourselves that we have a handle info for that's going to update our results. How am I doing for time? Oh, wow. OK. Sweet. So the second thing that I wanted to get across for you to take away from this talk is that you can use your superpowers that LiveView gives you, or even just knowing how to code for good in your community. And it doesn't have to be like writing a super complicated LiveView app to handle live texting. I think that is kind of an extreme edge case of what I'm advocating for people to do. The most important thing is going back to this idea of people over technology, is that you should find the people that are doing the work already. And it's happening on Facebook. It's happening inside of spreadsheets. And there's a lot of little things that you can do to augment that work, to make them more effective, while still retaining that community feel that people involved in it get, because they're operating in a world of message boards and spreadsheets. I found outside of the Bike Brigade work, I've had impact on other projects just by writing a script that takes a spreadsheet and processes, finds the right zip code for a bunch of addresses, really helped an organization. And that's not a LiveView magic thing. It's pretty straightforward, but having that in their back pocket really helped them out. Other orgs that we're involved in do a lot of great stuff with very precisely deployed tech. And I think that there's a lot of impact that you can have on your community. To, again, reiterate that you need to think about people over the technology. The third thing is that we're open source. So all the code that I talked about is on GitHub. You can check it out. I hope that you can learn something from it. It has a lot of patterns. Some of them are good. Some of them are not so good. So I'm a little bit anxious about open sourcing it, but please read it, maybe learn from it, maybe contribute, and check it out. There's a lot of people that I have to thank. So we have 1,500 plus volunteers. We have a great logistics team. I used the pronoun I for a lot of this talk, and that was true for the very beginning. But really, there's been a lot of tech help that we've had and a lot of contributors to the Bike Brigade app or other tech things that we do. And also the Reaker Center, check it out. It was a really amazing experience for me, and it was the place that was the impetus of this work. And get in touch. If you're interested, if you want, I really want to help you do mutual aid tech in your community. So I'm Adam Veytsman on Twitter. I'm Max at bikebrigade.ca. Get in touch. I want to see more of this happen, and I want to help you if I can. And it sounds like I have some time for questions.
Yeah, got 5 minutes.
Yeah. Any questions?
As far as this is based in Toronto, right? As far as expanding or building the platforms that include some of the our Bike Brigade specifically, are there plans for that in other cities currently?
I get this question a lot. So we're expanding into the greater Toronto area. I would love to expand further out if we find people that want to do that. And whether it's operating with us or take the open source application and do it yourself, either of those would work great. So if you're seeing this and you want to talk about expanding into your community, please email me. Yeah.
When you were structuring kind of your folder structure for all your LiveView components and stuff like that, something I found is that it gets kind of unruly as you're putting everything in your live directory and stuff like that. Do you have any established patterns that you liked about where you put all of your components and stuff like that?
So the question was about, do I have established patterns about where I put my live views? And my answer is that I agree with you. It's unwieldy. I haven't found a pattern that I like yet. There was a good talk yesterday about contexts that got me thinking about restructuring them. I do find the default where there's always an index.ex and a show.ex is not quite right. If someone knows a better pattern, I'd love to see it. All right, well, thank you very much.